Hey, welcome back. So the accounting profession is changing. If you're looking to be a licensed CPA, the requirement is changing in many states. I think over 40 states have now adopted this 120 plus 2 licensure pathway instead of the traditional 150 credit hours plus 1 year of experience. And honestly, I love it. I know that's a surprise to some people. There's mixed reaction. If you go on Reddit or if you ask different folks, you might get different responses. But, the thinking that I'm against is what they say is I had to do it, so everyone else behind me should have to do it. And I don't agree with that mindset in many ways, not just with this licensure thing, but in many ways, especially with all that's happening with AI and with technology. So looking back on my own career, I actually think this could have accelerated my growth by maybe a year or two. And I'm going to explain. So I graduated from college and I had 135 credits. So for some reason, I took an extra 15 credits in my bachelor's degree, right? Unnecessarily. So I started working at a small tax shop right away. I worked in a 7-person firm, small firm. And at the same time, right out of college, I started working at that firm. I got through my first tax season, got to see what that was. And by the end of December 2013, I had passed all 4 parts. So it took me 2 years of working there. So right at my 2-year anniversary, that's when I passed the 4th exam. So the CPA exam is a whole, topic in itself. But the crazy part about this and how this applies here is I had 2 years of experience. I had the 135 credits and I passed all 4 exams and I went through 2 tax seasons, gained a lot of experience, got to work directly with the partner, learned all about QuickBooks and servers and tax software and Lacert and all that stuff, right? Intuit. But I wasn't a CPA at that point. I still had to get those credit hours, right? The extra 5 courses I needed to take to get the 150. And I hear all kind of stories about people who went the route that I went. They didn't go the master's route. And I didn't go the master's route because, I paid for college out of pocket. My job during college, I worked there and they kind of paid some of the tuition and then I paid everything else out of pocket. So I graduated with no student loan debt, worked my way through college, and I didn't want to pay for the master's thing. It was literally like one of those things where it's like, no, I'm not going to go into debt and I'm not going to pay for a master's when I know there's still going to be this CPA exam. Like I was ready to get to the money, or get to the experience like already, I was sick of school at that point. I was tired of it, like probably many people. So you need those credits. Even to this day in Florida, you need to have 150 credits. I'm in Florida. So believe it or not, my CPA exams took me less time. It took me 13 months to start studying for the first one all the way to when I passed the 4th one. It took me longer, 18 months, to get those 5 credits because at this point, I'm a full-time accountant. I have full-time work schedule. I'm not able to study and go to school like I used to. So I finally got my license way in August of 2015. So it took me 4 or 5 years to get my license, even though it only took me 2 years to get my actual experience and my exams passed. So under today's pathway, I would have got my license right then when I passed the 4th exam. I had my 2 years and I would have been licensed almost 2 years earlier. And that's why I like this change, because during those 2 years, I was an accountant at that point. I worked full time. I got to see things up close and personal and, talking to the IRS, dealing with the IRS directly, preparing tax returns, like working with clients, working with the partners and the managers. And that's where I really learned the accounting, was from the experience. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the education isn't important and a master's in tax or a master's in accounting isn't worth it. It could be, but the CPA exam itself is like one of the hardest exams out there. Of course, you still need your bachelor's degree. You need experience. And I don't think forcing people to have to get those unnecessary filler credits after they've already proven that they can pass the exam and get experience, I don't think that's the difference between what makes somebody a great CPA or not. So for me, getting licensed, of course, it doesn't change anything. Like the day after you get your license, just like the day you graduate from college, like I had to go to work the day. I had my graduation in the morning, and then my shift started at 2 p.m. So like it was great. You graduate, but back to work. Same thing with the CPA license. Like I thought that day would mean something when the letter came in the mail and I got the approved license and I got the, certificate, but literally nothing changed that day. But what I would say is that the license opened up doors at the firm. So once I became a CPA, like the day, nothing automatically happens. You don't get a raise that day. Usually, I got like a small bonus, but the work files are still there on your desk. Like your work you had yesterday, you still got to work on it. The new work is coming. Like your chores, your duties, your tasks don't just disappear. But what started to change at the firm I was at was they started to trust me with more responsibility, and I got better exposure, which I do lean on today. Now I became the one that got to make those outstanding calls that need to be made for clients to the IRS. Now I became on power of attorney forms, they're sending me on there too, in addition to the partner. So I noticed that they did start looking at me a little differently, and that was valuable. It had its value. Being a CPA for me personally did change my life in a lot of ways. Where I was at, I was the first person in my family to graduate from college, first person to be born here in the States. Growing up, we did everything we could to make ends meet. And during those years where I was trying to finish those last classes, I still lived with my mom. So I passed the CPA exam. I was a staff accountant. And what that CPA license actually did for me in the year that I got it was I got a better opportunity. So I got a better, higher paying opportunity that literally paid for me to get my own apartment, move out on my own. And it eventually is what helped me buy my first investment property, which was a Section 8 rental property. So the license itself and the skill set that I gained, it's not necessarily like, oh, that makes me different than an accountant that's an enrolled agent or, a licensed tax preparer, not an unlicensed tax preparer. But for me, going down that path and saying, oh, I'm going to be a CPA, couple years earlier on, having that money might have had some help. So it might have helped me out back then. So I've been fortunate enough to be recognized on the top 40 under 40 CPA list. Now I've got 15 years of experience, but I've been licensed for over 10 years now. And something I could tell you that you do learn from going through that process of learning the exam, because, I'm still learning every single year. Tax laws change, technology is changing, AI is here and changing. So everything keeps changing. So if you're a college student and you're a new accountant, about to start being an accountant, and you're considering whether the CPA is worth it, my answer is absolutely yes. I'd encourage you to get it while you're young, actually, because before your life gets busy, before you have other responsibilities and you take on a bigger role at your firm, the good thing about when I was studying, I could leave work, go home. I was a 5-minute drive home, and I would study. So I was studying every day, making sure that I put in the hours to pass. I didn't fail. I passed straight through. Every test I passed without failing once. So I cut back going out with friends. I cut back on, hanging out on the weekends. I would stay home and study, et cetera, et cetera. But it definitely paid off over time. So every bit of the sacrifice was worth it. And I also think that this change of the 150 to 120 is like a very timely change, because if you've been following the accounting profession anywhere, we have a shortage. We have a generation of experienced older CPAs ready to retire, ready to sell to private equity, ready to get out. At the same time, we've got incredible changes to technology. We've got AI, all the stuff that enables. We've got the automation steps and new things that you could do that were not a part of my job when I was a staff accountant. So what I would argue is that we need more talented young accountants entering the accounting profession, and that's what's going to change how this looks in the next 10, 20 years as an accounting professional. Now, removing something like an unnecessary barrier while still keeping the exam, I think that's a good thing because, I mean, for me in my situation, it was like, it was 2 years of more money that I could have had ahead of time. So it did teach me that things are changing, things are always changing. And as an accountant, that's the thing that's always constant. Constant in the accounting is change. So when you're studying in college and you're taking a tax law class or you're taking a tax class, when I was taking my tax class in college, we were doing exams and we were being taught the tax law of George Bush, and then we've got the Obama changes and all the ACA credit stuff and all the changes that happened there that I had to learn through my career. Then we had the Trump, we had the TCJA, we had the Inflation Reduction Act, we got OBBBA. So one thing you do want to learn is that skill of absorbing the information, digesting it, and being able to, one, be examined on it for the test, but actually apply it to your client situation and apply it to whatever your job or wherever you're impacted with it. I'm dealing with small business owners, real estate investors. I'm dealing with some people that have SALT issues. So it's like you want to be able to filter through the information that's going to apply to you. And one thing I really love about the experience that I had was that I kind of learned that things are going to always change. Like when you graduate, when you get your CPA exam passed, when you get your first couple years of experience, boom, it hits you. There's a new president. There's a new change to your client base. There's a change in the construction industry. There's a change in real estate. And it's one of those things where it's like, what are you made of? Are you going to be able to pivot? Are you going to be able to find the win? Is this going to make you a better accountant? And that's like the theme is like right now with all the changes happening with AI, all the compliance efficiencies that we're experiencing, hey, this is going to take you from 30 hours to 10 hours. Now you got all that time back. What are you really going to do with that extra time? Are you going to become an advisor like you need to and start selling CAS and start selling more one-to-many or just things that are higher value to the one-on-one? What are you going to do? So looking back, I definitely think that the 120 rule would have benefited me, but I am happy that because I know some younger accountants, some students, people that I mentor, speak to, I know that they are anxious to get straight to it. And I try to tell them, work on those skills, work on your agility, make sure that you're able to understand what you're up against and be able to pivot. And that's going to be the best skill. Learn AI because we're all using AI now. So it's like, if you're the AI whisperer student that comes into a firm, that could be your way in. That could be your way to getting those. I don't want to say that CPA is like the only way to go. I mean, because like I said, I know people that are enrolled agents that are unlicensed and or not even an enrolled agent or a CPA or an attorney, and they figure ways to become tax advisors. I built 10Key because I wanted something that I just couldn't find anywhere else. As accountants, we carry years of knowledge in our minds, but sometimes what's crystal clear to us isn't so clear to our clients. And that's why I built 10Key. It's the advisory platform built by an accountant for accountants. It's designed for instant advisory. It helps you perform live calculations, create easy to understand visuals, and it brings clarity to complex situations. Because the best advisors don't just over explain the numbers, they show them and they use that to help people make more confident decisions. So if you're ready to level up from compliance to advisory, check out 10Key, named after the 10Key calculator. So my whole thing is about tax advisory. 10Key, my software app, is all about tax advisory, and you don't actually need those letters behind your name to do tax advisory, but in my experience, it did get me into those rooms where I got the good experience. I was able to have experience at a firm working with IRS issues, working on audits, working directly with partners that were doing advisory and high-level clients and complicated situations. And I use that CPA license thing as my way in to ask them for more complex work, harder work, more challenging work. And ultimately, it got me into another firm that me like a whole lot more. So then I eventually went out on my own. So looking back on my own career, if this rule had existed when I was getting licensed, it would have shortcutted a lot of things. It would have helped me out a lot back then when I needed it more. But I'm glad that there is this change and that they're thinking of ways to eliminate the barriers with still keeping the profession strong. And one huge benefit of getting your CPA is becoming a member of the AI CPA. And I'll tell you all why I do recommend. I mean, I just paid my dues to the AI CPA, and I'm not going to cancel that ever because it's one of the best things, one of the best benefits of being a CPA is being a member of the AI CPA. And I'll tell you all about that and why that's very important. I've had that question come up before, other account, like what's the benefit? Should I even be a CPA in the AI CPA, or should I just, not pay for that? Because one of the things that happens when you go from being at a firm or working as an accountant under somebody else and then going out on your own, for sure, insurance is now not a benefit at work. It's something you pay out of pocket. They're not paying for your AI CPA membership anymore. It's something you have to commit to paying yourself. And in the next episode, I'm going to tell you all about why I do recommend keeping your AI CPA membership active and what the benefits are. I'm going to rank the benefits because I know exactly what number one is. Number one is why I stay with them. So if you enjoyed this content, it's a little different than what we talk about all the time, tax advisory and talking about technology, but I think it's very relevant. The CPA exam license process is something that if you're going to end up hiring anybody, like one day you're going to have, or if you have any college students that are going to be working at your firm, it's going to look different than your year one to year two. And that's just natural. But you want to start thinking about their experience going through college with AI or being AI users and then starting and just start molding that experience that you want them to have. And that's what's going to keep the profession strong. In 12 years, I'm going to be 50 and I'm going to be on that side of the list where it's like the 50 plus people that are, of retirement age or something and on their way out. And it's one of those things where it's like it pays off over time getting your CPA license and becoming an AI CPA member, but any barriers that they can make so that more people like me could get in the game, I'm all for it. Hey, thanks for hanging out with me. If you like this episode, you're probably going to like everything else we've got going on. Check out the links below. Give 10 Key a try, hit subscribe, and come back next week. We've got plenty more to talk about.